Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monster Report. We are live for our first Monster Report Live. I'm your host, Nick Adam Poling. Monster Report's a show that highlights those entertaining creatures of film history. And today, we're going to be talking some MOTU Revelation, if you were familiar with the Netflix series, and beware, there be spoilers here. So if you haven't had the chance to see it, well, go out there and see it first. But since you're already here, stick around. We'll try not to spoil it too much for you, but just beware about that. I've got some guests I'm going to be bringing here in just a minute here. I just wanted to let everyone know that they can subscribe to the Monster Report. Check us out on podcast as well. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, all those good things. And obviously right here on YouTube. And we're excited to have you here for this first ever Monster Report Live. So as I get things kind of set up, hopefully everyone can hear me. And if you're in the chat, let us know what you think about this. And we'll just try to do a good job as we go along. And if we have technical glitches along the way, forgive us. But we'll kind of see how things go with that. So I'm going to bring in my guests for this evening. I have Mr. Everett Grondin at the bottom cell there. How you doing, Everett?
I'm doing pretty good, Nick. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And we have Jonathan Barnhart. He is a new one to the Monster Report. How you doing, Jonathan?
Doing all right. How you guys?
Doing great. Good. Excellent. Glad to have you guys here. And I'm going to get an overlay going here to show that we are live. As far as MOTU goes, I've known Everett for years. We've been Godzilla fans, and we've kind of more recently reinvigorated our love for MOTU. And Jonathan, someone I've recently gotten in touch with through Yuri Renfro, who's been on the show as well. And hopefully Yuri will be joining us here maybe in a couple of minutes if he's not too much of a slacker. If he's not here, we can talk about him freely. So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, Jonathan and Yuri are good friends from joining us from Illinois. So, Jonathan, you've got a pretty good MOTU collection of yourself, and you've been a fan for years and years, right?
Yeah. I was collecting it when I was a kid, and, so I kind of got back into it about 10 years back, somewhere along those lines. And yeah, just kept collecting. So, yeah.
And so you go back way to the television filmation days, right?
Even further back, really, because I remember it coming out and, having the mini comics in my hands and saying, hey, that's not what the mini comics say, So, I watched all that when I was a kid, but, I already had a firm idea what it was, from like the cartoon or for the mini comics and the commercials and stuff that they sold before they put the cartoons out. So, yeah, I was there when it all hit the stores and showed up, and I remember being a kid and, bugging my mom to death to get some of it. So,
yeah. Well, and we always got to remember that this started out as a toy line, and if you haven't seen the toys that made us, it's got a great history on where MOTU came from, and starting with that Lords of Power idea and kind of jumping off of the Conan bandwagon and things. And so it really spoke to us as kids. It was kind of a Conan swords and sorcery and technology that we could embrace as kids and continue on into our adulthood. And here we are talking about it now with this, I don't know what iteration you'd say, because as far as the television shows have gone, we had the Filmation series, we had New Adventures of He-Man, we had the one film, and we had the 2000X series. And here we are with, we also had She-Ra. We can't forget about that as well. So we've had several television iterations, and now we're here in the streaming days of Netflix with MOTU Revelation. And so knowing that, we're going to be talking about part 2, but we'll recap a little of part 1 as well. As far as part 1 is concerned, how does this part 2 compare with part 1? I guess give me your feedback. We'll start with you, Jonathan, about how you felt about part 1 and where you think part 2 took us.
I was really happy with how part 1 went, but I wasn't looking at part 1 as just, over and done, and a lot of people, I think, jumped on that, watched it, and were just like, made a lot of complaints about it without knowing where it was going and what was going to happen on the second half. And I just felt like the first half was a build. I mean, you had to lay out certain things and set certain things up for them to do what they were going to do in the second half. And I think that's where it was at. I think there was a lot of foreshadowing on what was going to happen. I kind of called what was going to, happen in the second half with some things, but like there are some things they threw in that I just wasn't expecting. And, largely, I was happy with pretty much everything. There's very little I have complaint with in it, where I saw a lot of people in fan groups just going on and on and on about what they hated about it. And I couldn't see it. So,
yeah. And it kind of did kind of get started off on maybe the wrong foot with that Kevin Smith behind the scenes controversy. Everett, you and I talked a little about that and how some things came to light that were kind of proven to be true, right?
Yeah, they were proven to be true, and it's the biggest issue that I think a lot of people had was that a lot of people were kind of foretelling where this is going to go, what this show's going to be about, who's it's going to center around. And then they were still just like, oh no, this is not going to happen. This not, but it's like, I mean, what are you going to do instead of, can't necessarily say, oh, you're right. Because then that spoils it for everybody who maybe isn't a part of the argument. But then it's just like, you still just lied about everything and just tried to cover it up so bad. But I mean, for me, I do agree that the first part had a lot of buildup. I knew that some of the choices they made, even though I didn't necessarily agree with it or see it coming. And then it was just hard for me to grasp that there's no way they're doing that to that character. And then this is going to be it. Like, there's got to be more to it, because if they really go that route, then they really are like, you're going to screw it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that I mean, I guess what do you do when there's damage control to do? Do you say anything at all? Do you try and confront it? Do you try to call them a liar? And Kevin Smith, he did publicly go out there and somewhat put his foot in his mouth, and things started to come out about him and his background with MOTU. I guess I can, half of me defend him, half of me not. When you're a creator of something and you have had those public comments where in the past you have said you were not a MOTU fan, I'll say this, like Jonathan, you kind of came back to it after a lull in your life that maybe it wasn't a big part of your entertainment life. You kind of went into different directions, and then you found yourself kind of reinvigorating your love for MOTU, and you came back to it. So I can kind of say that maybe at a certain point in my life, I might have said, yeah, it's really not an interest of mine. Just like, there were things as a kid that I used to watch that, now I really could give a care about, so like, I can't think of an example right off the top, but it's like, well, like for instance, Transformers, I was a big fan of Transformers as a kid, and even collected a bunch of them, and kind of got away from it for a while. And even more recently started getting back into it because my kids are getting into it. So it's kind of cool to see that. So at a certain point in my life, I might have said, yeah, it's not really one of my interests, but it's kind of in the background there. But, as far as part 1 and part 2 goes, Everett, let's get your thoughts real quick on that.
As a whole, it works, and I like it. I did enjoy part 2 a lot more than I did part 1. I don't know whether that has to do maybe some of the action between Skeletor and He-Man Primal, whatever you want to call him. But like all of that was really enjoyable. And then but again, it's like the final battle did end up focusing on not necessarily those two, but the other side of the story with Evelyn and Tila and everything like that. So as a whole, though, I like it. And then of course the way it ended, I don't even know where they're going to go with it. So
well,
if they do at all.
Yeah, it's and this is actually an interesting thing I've kind of been thinking about recently is we had a pretty good amount of time between part 1 and part 2 to stew over part 1. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you guys think. Either one of you guys, was it too long? Was it just the right amount?
I really
mean,
kind of didn't like the idea of them splitting it like that. I really kind of wish they had just gone ahead and dropped the whole series as one piece and let us watch through it, because I think that a lot of the people that had the complaints about the first half were the people that were going to stew and cause more trouble over it during that break than anybody else,
Yeah.
because they couldn't see the rest of it. They couldn't see, where it completely went, and they weren't happy with the first half. So, I mean, and I don't know, maybe they wanted that. Maybe they wanted the controversy so that more people would come looking. I don't know. Some people do that. They'll stir up the pot just to get people talking, so that people that would have never watched will come to watch just to see what's people are complaining about.
Yeah, that's true. Because
But
I also agree that if you're gonna do like a part 1 and part 2 of a series and it's 5 episodes each, so you got 10 episodes in total, if you're really gonna split up 10 episodes like that, I want to say the episodes have to at least be their worth in weight. I would say the
yeah,
episodes would have to be at least those hour-long episodes. You don't break up a 30-minute show or less without commercials
as
into a
much as
10 episode 2-part. Yeah, it's like, come on.
as much as I don't like it, I would have rather seen, like, if they were going to try and split it any at all, I would have rather seen it where they do like a week to week episodic, like they're doing with like some of the
Or that
Marvel.
too.
And yeah, I would rather see that, where you watch an episode and go, oh wow, and you come to the end of the episode and you're like, well, now I got to wait a week. I would rather do that than do 5 episodes and go, okay, how long we got to wait for the next 5 to show up? Because that's the way I felt. They didn't really announce a time frame for when it was going to be coming. They said later this year, and you're just sitting there going, well, later this year doesn't really tell me much. I mean, they could wait until Christmas and drop it. So
yeah,
I
and
don't
in the
know.
meantime, you kind of lost interest in the meantime
Yeah.
of waiting that
Well,
long.
and then, like I said, then you have all these people that are arguing and fighting over it. And I started leaving some of the fan groups on Facebook, because I just got tired of hearing a lot of the arguments, because, like, most of the arguments weren't even like what I would call valid criticisms. It was like really chauvinist kind of anti-woman hate kind of stuff at times, just because they were using Tila as a character. And I'm like, how much did you watch the original series? Because she was always a strong character in the original series. She was always trying to stand up for herself. Yeah, He-Man pulled her butt out of the fire at times, but there was only so much she could do it sometimes, being just a normal human. But uh, she was always a strong character. What was different? And suddenly all these people are screaming, oh, it's too woke. And I'm like, stop it. It annoyed me. And I started leaving fan groups left and right, just because I got tired of seeing post after post after post popping up in my timeline like that.
Well, and back to the release of it and how it was released, like you said, with a five block at a time, 5 episodes blocked at a time like that. We binge watch, because if it's there, we're going to watch it. So if they released, for me, I'm a big fan of Mandalorian. So when they released the Mandalorian on Disney Plus, 1 episode at a time, a week, or the Bad Batch when it was, coming out, I was a big fan of that. And then they left with a cliffhanger. I'd wait a week and get excited about the next episode, but it continually stayed fresh in my mind and exciting, and people were talking and actively talking. In this case, we're going to binge watch 5, but those cliffhangers really don't hold much, because I'm going to immediately watch the next episode.
To the next one. Yep.
So,
because I remember that when it came out, and I finally had, because when it first came out, I didn't have time to sit down that night and watch it. And so I went, I don't know, maybe 3-4 days before I actually had time to watch it, and tried to avoid everything anyone was saying. And then finally sat down. Of course, when I did, then plowed right through all the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I did on the second half too. So
because when it was funny, because when Nick asked me to be a part of this, I was like, man, I haven't even had the time to really sit down and watch any. I haven't watched part 2, man, so I'm gonna have to binge it. And so literally probably an hour and a half ago is when I finished part 2. So that's fresh in my mind. But it was like, you get done with part 1, and it's not that I wasn't interested, but that just shows you it wasn't like I need to sit down and watch this the first chance I get. It was just I haven't had the chance, and I had better things to do in the meantime.
Yeah.
And this gave me a reason to just get it done.
And I think when I get a little bit of free time, I'm probably going to sit down and just binge watch all the episodes.
Oh, did he freeze for you too?
And things that I might have missed when I was watching too.
Yeah, you froze for a second there, but we got what you said there. I was going to let Everett know we've got in the chat Mr. Hootie Dean, if that rings a bell.
Mr. Hootie Dean. I think so. I think I've seen him comment on my videos.
Yeah, okay, so that might be something. In case you're wondering out there, Everett has a channel on YouTube called Godzilla Fan Freaks. Check him out and subscribe to his channel. He's got some really great stuff, not just Godzilla, but MOTU as well. So, definitely check his out. And, well, as far as, and I want to give a plug, Jonathan, you've got an Instagram where you get to show off a lot of collection that
yeah. I've got a little bit of a chat set up on Facebook. I run a group on Facebook, and as an extension of that, I was doing like a live chat set up over there. But eventually, I think I am going to set up on YouTube as well. So,
okay. So if they wanted to look you up on Facebook, which group did you want to point them at?
The Grumps, Grumpy Old Geek Codgers. Sounds stupid, but it's basically just an all things geek group. Yuri's in there and a handful of other friends, and just pretty much a free for all on anything geek, collectibles and whatnot. Just it's ridiculous and fun, and we don't fight too much, so that's another good thing about it. So,
all right, awesome. And so getting back to Revelation, so I'll get kind of just my 2 cents about the part 1 and part 2 is going into it kind of knowing it was going to be more of a Tila story. Obviously I wanted to see more He-Man because that's where we come from, as it was the original series was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So obviously we connect with that main character, but wasn't disappointed necessarily in it. I think that my biggest thing was, and if you see my reaction video to part 1, it still stands. Kevin, stop killing off our characters. Stop doing that. I don't want to see my beloved characters die or die twice.
And then early on in the second half, we wipe out a couple more, So
yeah, no, when we get around to it and when we can talk about it and stuff, I'm not going to say anything yet, but there was a part in part 2 that it infuriated me. I was so mad. I was so mad in the one part of part 2.
Well, as far as the character deaths, go right ahead into them if that's what you were going to discuss. And we're completely spoiler heavy here. Go right ahead. So, what are you going to say, Jonathan? Or go ahead.
Okay, what did it for me was Panther. I was so mad about Panther.
Oh.
Like, Panther shows up and you're like, hey, we get to see Panther after all this time in the new animation style, this, that. And he's part of the battle. He's putting up a fight. Who do they kill? They kill Panther. I'm like, really? Really? Oh, I wanted to turn it off. I was like,
Mm-hmm. I think what's kept me from like blowing a gasket over them killing characters in that was that I was keeping up with some of these newer DC series that they were running, and every time there was a new DC series, they ended up killing off characters in it for one reason or another. And so I don't know, I guess I built up kind of a numbness to the possibility of them killing somebody. But because it's like every time they come up with a new iteration, they come back, oh yeah, we got to have these guys. Oh, we killed them in that. Oh, nobody will notice. Just go on, put them back in. So, I maybe I'd kind of become numb to that situation. Of course, then again, when you're kids and you're playing with the toys, don't tell them how many times you kill a character while you're playing. So.
You still have the toy though, and when they killed Optimus Prime back in the 1980s, 86, you see that they were trying to sell new toys, but I really think that was a gamble that didn't pay off because
There was a
because
lot
they're
of
trying
crying
to
kids over that.
they're trying to get you a new line of toys, obviously. But here's the thing: we buy new iterations of the old toys, anyways. And if you look at, let's just go to the Transformers example. Netflix has got its Transformers series. You still got Optimus and Ultra Magnus and all of the classic, Jazz and Bumblebee and stuff in their classic forms. So they're going to just make new iterations of the old characters. So there's really no reason to necessarily kill them off, in my opinion.
It's like variant toys. You get all these new variants that they put, like He-Man, Skeletor. They just kept going, well, how are we gonna like dress up He-Man, Skeletor this year, and put some more figures out on the board for us to sell? Or how many outfits can Batman have in a DC toy line? I remember Batman lines literally where there's like 6 versions of Batman and like 2 bad guys, and you're like, how is this selling?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, but it's like this part 2. We get we get Fisto and Clamp Champ. They come right out and dead. Let's kill them off. And even in the first series, it's like, oh, cool, Moss Man. Nope, dead. And so you just and
the only thing
Man,
I can say about that though is that at least you got to see them, because there's times when you feel like you see He-Man on screen all the time when you're watching the old cartoons, and some of these guys, they'll like pop up for like a couple of minutes and then they're gone. But there's a lot of characters that you felt like, this guy never got to be shown. You never had this guy on the show. Why? This is my favorite character. Why is he not on the show? When you're a kid, but at least you got to see them before they got killed. So I'll go that way.
Yeah, I guess I want to see them kind of continue on with the series, and with this cliffhanger at the end of part 2, that's going to bring in new, interesting, just dynamic to the show, with the whole idea that magic was what was the driving force, because the universe is running out of magic, Eternia is running out of magic, kind of like a, if you were to call it like an energy crisis in a sense. And then there was that suspicion of magic, but an embrace of technology. And now there's going to be the technology that they're going to have to be suspicious of, and an embrace of magic. So that's going to make things interesting into part 3 if it happens. So I'm kind of, there's a new dynamic to it, and probably, I'm assuming, new characters to go along with that as well. Oh, Jonathan, I think your mic is muted. Can't talk today. Oh,
yeah, he's still muted.
Oh, it says their mic is not connected. If that tells you anything, that's
technical glitch. I think he's back now. He's back.
Oh.
It's very subtle.
It's real quiet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It just got real quiet there. It's like a little whispers, but we'll keep going as he's working kind of on that. But yeah, that idea of motherboard at the end, yeah, was kind of neat. Actually, I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. Let me ask you this: in our show map, we talked about the character twists. So there was definitely a lot of story twists and character twists. So which one of those maybe character twists stood out to you that we weren't expecting that from that character?
I want to say, but it was also kind of there, but I wasn't sure where they were going to go with it. But Cringer, I want to say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He was really engaging in everything, even without being powered up and being Battle Cat. He wasn't the normal Cringer that we all know, but I'm pretty sure that even if they did this back in the Funimation days, even I'm pretty sure they would make Cringer more courageous in this time, that, he's like, okay, I need to really kind of stop acting this way, because, this is our home and we have to defend it no matter what. So that was one that was, for me, was Cringer. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but Evil Lynn kind of surprised me too. Like the whole twist with that. Like I was like, okay, so now she's like a Dark Empress, and she also betrayed Skeletor and has the power. So now she's an Empress champion, and she's evil. And it's like, so that was interesting. So
Yeah, that was definitely the twist I was going to say, is that we went through a lot with Evelyn, where she was on Skeletor's side, then she was on their side, now she's back on Skeletor's side, then she's on her own side, and then they gang up against her. I thought I would have loved to have seen more of this, Skeletor and Prince Adam working together. I know that it seems wrong in so many ways, but for some reason, them working together on their plan. And then it's like, well, we're not going to just waltz in there and say, kindly, would you just give
please
up
stop destroying?
We're doing it, aren't we? You know, so yeah, I thought that was, I wanted to see actually more of that, mortal enemies. Jonathan, yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. I don't know if you're back yet. It's so quiet. I don't know why. Sorry, man. Okay. Yeah, give her another try if there's a way. It's a real little whisper. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, so that was definitely something that wasn't expecting, and but I would have loved to see more of that. I love seeing when, you know, mortal enemies have to work together somehow, and even that idea that Adam, when he became He-Man again and created Skelegod, you know, shared the power with them. I thought that was neat where it was going to go. I wouldn't have minded seeing more fights between He-Man and Skeletor. Obviously, we love that. We love to see that. But the fight scenes were pretty neat, actually, to see. And I know it's probably part of the animation style, but the hand-to-hand stuff, I guess it's because it's anime style. It's like you have an action and then they hold that action for, you know, a few seconds so they can have a lines of dialogue between each other. So like swords clash and then they'll hold that so they can have that scene. But there was other places where it was dynamic and moving and all of that. So yeah, as far as action scenes and all that. So what about the idea that she destroyed Preternia? How did you react to that?
I pretty much just I related it with, and the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, she pulled a Majin Buu, because from Dragon Ball Z, Majin Buu was the enemy later on in the series, and he actually destroyed like Otherworld, which is basically Preternia in Dragon Ball Z. So it was like, oh, so she pulled a Majin Buu. Okay. So it was like, it shocked me, but I was like, it's not really unseen. I've kind of seen stuff like this before where they destroyed the afterlife or whatever. So
yeah. I don't know how you blow up heaven, but
yeah,
they figured it out. And so, yeah, there was that idea. That was to me a little disappointing too, because I was like, you know, they didn't do anything. They were just there enjoying the afterlife. And there goes, you know, King Grayskull and Wondar and all them just standing right. They weren't bothering you, Evelyn. But there is something that needs to be, I guess, addressed in that. And I kept saying this over and over again: nihilism. And so she looked into the universe and saw that it was empty in a sense. So she was kind of reveling in this idea that it's and depressed because it was empty. So I got this idea of nihilism. It looks like Jonathan is back. How's your mic? Yeah, still quiet. It's there, but it's not. I'm not exactly sure what's happening. So I'm sorry. I wish I could help you. And yeah, just try it as soon as you try something different, and kick in anytime whenever you're able to get that. Sorry, man. I wish I was there to give you a hand with that. I think he's in and out however he can. So as far as yeah, that idea of nihilism, so that there is no religion, there is no grand scheme, there is no God in a sense, and if you look at how the story is supposed to go, the idea of there to be a grand designer or a god in a sense is that Zoar, I guess you could say, they've kind of pronounced it in different ways, but Zoar, the eagle, being kind of the grand designer or god of that. That was kind of a cool idea that that they brought in with that, because if there is to be a god of this world, who would that be? Is it the sorceress? Is it I've also kind of thought of the Trollans, Orko's race, as kind of that too. Yeah. And or Zodak, in a sense, because Zodak is in the middle and he's kind of pulling the strings to see, where if one side is over the other, that he's got to bring balance to him and kind of side with the other one, even though he ends up kind of siding with the good anyways. So we did get a question here in the chat, actually. This is interesting.
Yeah, I saw that.
To Evelyn. Yeah, the parents raising her up as a food source. Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty. That's pretty dark. I'm not gonna lie.
There's there's definitely a message there, but you know what? It was it's kind of goes back to that idea of even old cultures that would be starving, and so they would look to whatever kind of food source they would, and it's like, how does it get so bad that they would actually look at their own children in that sort of way? So that was definitely a dark turn towards things. But the other thing was, I guess it was like, this is a different universe than the 2000X series. And if you remember the 2000X series, it was the faceless one. That's where she comes from. So comes from the idea of magic. I guess we're also throwing the whole Keldor backstory out too, because when she met Skeletor, he's Skeletor.
Yeah. So that stayed that way. Something I did want to bring up, and I don't know if you noticed it either, but being Godzilla fans, did you like the recycled Godzilla roar from the Hanna-Barbera series that they used on the Minions?
Now, I did not actually catch that.
Yeah.
Did they?
If you have it in your head, and so the old Hanna-Barbera Godzilla series, roar, they recycled. It's the same exact noises for the Minions, and I was like,
really?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's well, I'm gonna have to watch it again for that very reason. It must be in a sound bank somewhere, kind of like you've heard the Wilhelm scream before. Yeah, that's been used everywhere. So it must be something in a sound bank. So it probably did come from that. That's cool. I guess I'm gonna have to watch that again. And so also, as MOTU 87, 86, 87, whatever, the MOTU film fans, how about some of the little homages and little winks and nods towards the film that you saw?
Yes.
There you are.
I enjoy those just because. Was I frozen for a second?
Just a second, but you're back.
Okay, cool. I enjoyed those, but that's because I really enjoy the 87 film. So anything that's like an Easter egg or a throwback to it, I really like. Especially at the end where Skeletor is like, "Let this be, a final battle," and it's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I know where I've heard that."
Yeah, and we got Blade for a hiccup. We didn't even get a voice actor to go with Blade. That would have been I would have loved to hear Anthony DeLongis actually back to be the voice of Blade. I think he could pull that off. But he was on there, then he wasn't. It was kind of funny that they didn't have him in that. Evelyn was kind of doing a briefing with the henchmen. I saw Pig Boy and Spikecore, Clawful, they were all there. And then Blade was not in that lineup, but Beastman was. But then when they, Tila and Andre get into the dungeon, they're down there, and then Blade just suddenly appears. All right. Yeah. Third time's the charm.
I don't know. Let's see.
Here he is. There we
go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Okay. I don't know. I bumped a chord a while ago. That's all I can find that I did. I don't know.
I'm familiar with tech glitches, believe me. But we were talking about the 87 movie and some of the little nods that this part 2 had to the 87 movie. Any ones you wanted to point out there, Jonathan?
I don't know. It was fun to see Blade pop up. I mean, a lot of people were just like, whoa, wait, why did Blade show up? Because a lot of people weren't expecting that, I don't think. But I think like with me, I wasn't really like freaking out so much about that as what, there were some other things that popped up here and there that, that I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, it was neat to see that and people fighting Blade, in the cartoons instead of live action. I think it would have been kind of cool if they included a few more characters from that then, since they went that route.
Yeah, we had a little glimpse of Big Boy.
Yeah. For whatever he managed to do for a few seconds on the screen. I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are complaining about is like their favorite characters popped up, but they were like on screen for like maybe a few minutes and then they were gone. Whether they were killed or you just didn't see them again or what. But and that would be a great thing for the series if they could go on and bring more of the characters into it. And you guys were talking about the ending a while ago. I'm looking at that and I'm seeing, the Horde references coming up, but I'm also wanting to know, since they're pumping, technology into him, is he going to be like either the Skeletor that they did at the end of the line, the laser power Skeletor or whatever, laser light Skeletor, or is he going to be, then what the new adventure Skeletor is with the cybernetic attachments and whatnot? That's what I'm interested in right now.
Very much. I was actually thinking the exact same thing. That the new adventure Skeletor, where he's teched out, and well,
so see, that's where the line was going when they ended it. And they did one more year in Europe and released these 2 laser figures over there, the light up figures. And both He-Man and Skeletor, were these light up figures, were both basically the bare bones start of what their characters would be for the New Adventures line. And they killed the line, they did a pause, and just started over with the new He-Man line. And so, you would have already seen that kind of stuff coming along if the line had continued. And I just wondered if that's what they're trying to go for with that part of the character.
Yeah, it could be. And it's interesting that it would have been, Hordak as far as technology. I never really thought of him. Well, the whole series of Masters of the Universe is this swords and sorcery and technology. I always thought of Hordak. I guess he's somewhat technological if you think about it. Not any more or less, I think, than anyone in Eternia or I guess Etheria, if they're going that route. That's where he's from. But as far as that dynamic, let's actually jump ahead on what you would think, and we'll start with you, Jonathan. If there's anything missing from this that you would have liked to have seen, what would you have added to maybe enhance this this part 1 or part 2?
I'm not really sure. Really, I there's so many things that they included from the original line. Like when they did the story of Teela, that throws back to an episode of the original series where she found out who she was, where she came from, and they basically couldn't let her have that knowledge. And so Sorceress, basically, casts a spell over her and wipes her memory and says basically one day, you'll know what really happened. So this was you being able to see finally what really, her find out what really happened. And, and I know they used that as storyline for her to be mad at everybody, but, it all kind of fit. I'm trying to think back to things from the original series that they cut, they never really finished with. I do like seeing that they, there's that possibility of Hordak and the Horde showing up. if they continue it on. And I mean, you kind of almost have to. And it's kind of neat that they mention, if I remember right, they vaguely mention the Snake Men, but they don't really straight up bring that up. They explain it as that it was one of the wars that was fought in, the past, but they don't really fully explain it, which that leaves you open to, tell that story if you wanted to. But I at this point, I wouldn't say include that in that first series, because just one more thing that you would have to throw in. It's like, throwing everything in the kitchen sink and trying to pick, a couple things out while you're digging.
Yeah, you're right about that, because it's like you can go overboard and lose your audience with that, by saying, well, we've got to do this, and this, and this, and this. And then someone finally says, wait, let's simplify things and just get it down to bare bones. There's going to be some fan service here and there, which obviously this one definitely had that going on for it, because we kept wanted to point at things and say, oh, did you see that? Oh, did you see that?
Yeah.
That's great. But yeah, we were also talking about the Evelyn storyline, that they really, strayed from what the 2000X did with the faceless one, her coming from that.
Yeah.
And then the whole Keldor story is pretty much gone too, because when she's introduced to Skeletor as a child, when she's a child, he's Skeletor. He's not Keldor at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that happened, it happened off screen and before she met him.
And in a way, he's kind of like Joker in the comics. They want to tell different ways that, how he came about. You go back to the original comics, they just say that he was like some sort of like sorcerer from another dimension, that his people were all like him, blue skin and skull faces, that basically they came out of this, this other dimension. So then, but later on, by the end of those mini comics, then they tell the story where he was, Randor's brother, and he was looking for power, and he went searching for it, and his transformation came about from him, going to another dimension looking for this power that he eventually comes back with. And so they were going that direction, but they were telling it different than what the 2000X series goes with. But then you go look at different versions of the comics. Like I said, they want to change his story, and then this one, he's already been with the Horde and been Skeletor for a while before he found her, and they changed her story, with the whole faceless one, and where the Havoc staff came from and all of that, because that was part of where the Havoc staff came from as far as like the 2000X series goes. It tells him basically taking the staff from her father.
Right. Yeah, and they changed that kind of origin story too, and then the 2000X series. This is one of the things I remember talking with Yuri when we had our episode on the 2000X series, where I kind of blew his mind with that. When you watch it again, you realize that that Man-at-Arms is ambiguously Tila's father, but when it comes down to it, it turns out that he was her uncle, and that Fisto is actually her biological father. And I remember telling him that, and it's easy to miss that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people argue about in the fan groups too, because people will say, well, Man-at-Arms is her dad. Well, no, he just raised her, and Fisto is actually her dad. And they get into big arguments, and I just go, all right, whatever. Walk away.
It depends on what world, in which iteration you're watching.
Yeah, and so that's what I was saying. Like, well, like even when you're a kid and you're playing, with the toys, you make up your own stories. So everybody's got their own stories and their own background. But and then you see that in what they did with Filmation when they changed it, because like in the original comics, He-Man was just this barbarian who got gifted with all these magic weapons. And then you go to the Filmation version. Oh, no. He's Prince Adam, and he magically transforms into He-Man. And, it's kind of the whole Superman thing where it's, he's Clark Kent, and he's hiding in plain sight. And there he is, and nobody notices him. And they change things so many times. I mean, even when you get into the classics figures.
Mhm.
The guys that were handling that, specifically one guy in general that was handling that, used a lot of his childhood storyline, a lot of his fan storyline for what they did with storyline on the cards. And there are fans that will straight up argue to the death that that is the exact story and that there is no other story. And everybody's got their own thing that they want. So
It's kind of like the multiverse of like even Marvel has got.
oh yeah.
Yeah, you have the Amazing Spider-Man or just Spider-Man. Yeah, there's two different series of that. Or if you're talking about animated X-Men versus the comic books versus the film series, the origin stories are kind of all over the place, and some of them relate, some of them don't. So it's kind of like you can pick and choose which series you want to follow. And so, there's not like one canon storyline, and even Star Wars doesn't get it right because they're always,
and Marvel's only going to get worse because they embraced the whole multiverse thing when they started in on the Loki series and went after Kang and that. So once that well broke loose at the end of that, I mean, they've basically just opened it wide open for that kind of thing. So they're embracing it. They're going to love on it, whereas not everybody else would. So,
well, yeah, pretty soon we'll have, crossovers of other, fan series too. We're going to have the Transformers show up and He-Man and G.I. Joe's in there too. And then Godzilla's in the background. So it's going to be just a wild crossover and nothing's going to make sense. And so
a giant battle at the end of Player One or Ready Player One.
Right. Yes. Just a carnival of IP, of intellectual property. That idea too, the origin stories. There was another one that was kind of coming up. Oh, I was wondering when I got to, I don't know if it's the second or third episode of part 2, when we had, I guess it was part second episode where we had Rage He-Man and or what I think you called him He-Hulk.
That's what I like to refer to him as.
Right. It's like, I was kind of wondering, where are they going with this? Because I was interested in seeing, are they going to go back to the original Don Bluth series where he's the wandering barbarian? And are they going to have to reteach him to be a civilized,
warrior? A spoon.
Yeah. I was wondering how that was going to go. Because I was going to say that at some point he's going to have to wander into a village and he's going to, meet the Green Goddess. And we're going to have that storyline somehow thrown in there, even though it should have happened in the distant past, but now it's going to happen now. I don't know. I thought they were going to do something there. And so I wasn't disappointed. He went back to King Randor. There was that forgiveness moment. That was cool.
I liked that they did that. It was fun. I liked watching it. I thought it was fun that they brought that in. I think a lot of people that don't remember the old mini comics or didn't get in on the classics line was kind of clueless as to what was going on there with that. But at the same time, they embellished on it too, because in the comics he's a barbarian, but he can speak and he's not just running around in a mad rage, and he's not a giant. And in that, they straight up made him into a giant, and that's why I kept saying He-Hulk, because if you just painted him green, all of a sudden he's Hulk in a loincloth running around smashing everything. And I was just like, well, if they don't make this figure right, I'm going to go find a Hulk figure. I'm going to make it.
Give him long hair. It'll be great.
Yeah. Just some sculpting and some painting, and, there we go. But
in fact, Megator, if you take the Megator figure and don't give him green skin, just give him the pale skin, like He-Man would be. It's just a repaint of Megator in a sense. He's got the long hair already, so you could go with that. I mean, that's what the classics, or not the classics, the vintage line and Origins is. They've just repurpose or repaint one thing or the other.
Even the classics did to a degree. There was a lot of reuse of parts there in that.
True.
And they did make a Megator and a Titus figure, for that line too, because those are the only ones I actually have of those because the original was so expensive. Those were two of the handful that were turned out in Europe on that extra year after the line had been killed here. So that was the weird thing too. You talk to people that were over there, they were like, oh, we had these sitting around in bins on clearance. Nobody wanted them. We had no clue what they were over here. And so eBay pops up, 10 years later or so, and people are like, what's this thing on eBay that I've never seen before? And people got in fights over them over here, and they were like, a couple bucks a piece over there. So,
nice.
Just collecting stuff, but
yep,
you can't afford one now.
No, I know. Yeah, I was going to ask Everett. Everett's a big fan of Skeletor, and
Yes.
we have a lot of conversations about the character Skeletor. He kind of began his collection, his MOTU collection, focusing on Skeletor. So, with this iteration, the Mark Hamill, let's say, Revelation Skeletor, how does this rank up with all the other iterations, or even just focus on him himself? I mean, do you like him? Do you not? What do you think?
I like it, but I don't get what everybody was saying. Like Mark Hamill put his own twist into it, because I didn't see that. Because the first time I heard Skeletor and then it kept going, I was like, okay, I'm watching Batman now. Because it's like he was basically the Joker, and it's like,
Yeah,
it didn't have its own special twist, in my opinion. I was like, this is basically the Joker, but whatever. But I mean, if I had to rank him anywhere, I mean, Frank Langella is still number one for me. I love Frank Langella. That's never going to get old. Nothing can top that for me, not even the Filmation series. But then the Filmation series comes in a close second. And then the 2000 series would probably have to be third, and then this one would have to be last, as far if I had to rank them, that's probably the way it would go.
But you haven't seen the New Adventures, so you're going to have to
check
that.
No, I have not seen the New Adventures. When you messaged me about it and you were like, yeah, not even the kids really enjoyed it, I was like, okay.
I like it, but yeah, I couldn't get my kids into it. But back to Skeletor, Jonathan, I look like you may have disagreed, and that's okay. We can agree here.
You talking about New Adventures? I never got into it, and I still to this day it just does not really hook me for interest. A big part of it was at the time I was just getting old enough that like I would still buy toys, but like I wasn't buying toys like I used to. I had other interests, and they killed the original line, and I looked at the new toys on the shelf when they came out because I'm like, oh, they're doing new He-Man stuff. I got to see this, and I looked at it, and I'm like, that's not He-Man. That was my immediate, response to looking at the toys because they were a lot smaller. They looked less muscular, and then they've got all this sci-fi stuff attached to them, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm just like, they killed my He-Man.
Yeah, it didn't reinvigorate that spark.
It didn't do it for me. But there were people at the time that were younger than me, though, that got into it, and I talked to fans here and there that are younger than me that just go on about how much they liked it. Like I can remember when Power Rangers came out, I wasn't really a huge fan of it. I remember watching it with my brothers and sisters, but my brothers and sisters and people that are their age love the Power Rangers like we love He-Man, and will go on and on at length about different iterations of the teams and stuff. And I guess it's a matter of time and place with a lot of things. I never really got into the New Adventures, and still, even when they turned out the really nice ones that they versions of those figures in the classics line, I just never really got into them. There was only a handful of those that I have for any one reason or another, and some of them I bought for parts to make customs. So
yeah,
I mean that's the way it was. I mean, you could buy some of those fairly cheap and take them apart and use the parts to build something else. So there was things like that I did. But Yeah, and as far as like Skeletor goes, like just like versions, yeah, Langella is so amazing in that because you don't look at him and immediately think that this is buffoon. I mean, after a while in filmation, time after time after time, no matter how evil he's supposed to be, he comes off looking like a moron because there's always just these horrible mistakes that happen, and he gets, thrown to the side like a sack of garbage. But the Langella version, he legitimately looks like he's somebody that you would not cross. He plays off that air that you would not mess with him, and that everybody steps in line and does what he says or they're dead. And I got that feel from the 2000X series too, and that's part of why I like 2000X series. I'm interested. I don't know why, but I am now interested in seeing this new animated series. At first glance, I looked at the toys and I'm like, this is entirely made for kids. This is entirely made for kids now. It's not for me. But I saw just a couple of little clips because, you pull up Netflix and they show you like a short clip of something that they're trying to get you to look at. And it was Skeletor having an interaction with Evil Lynn and I think it was Whiplash. And I still look at the goofy proportions on it, and I'm still thinking goofy kid show. But what he said in those less than a minute that I watched that clip was enough to get my interest and make me want to go see if it's really going to stay that good. Because he actually sounded evil. He sounded like they were using, because he was talking about using Snake Mountain and learning from the mistakes of the Snake Men and what they did wrong and how they lost to, turn the tide and, win Eternia for him. And so, it at least sounded like they knew what they were talking about and that they were interesting, even with all the weird changes they made. But
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Ringtone.
Godzilla had to say something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He had to make an appearance. I have only seen the first episode of the CGI series and with my kids. And honestly, I wasn't into it. My kids were to a point. There was that line where there's also a technology and magic sort of kind of stigma in that one too. And I remember the one of the characters in the tribesmen. Again, I don't know enough about it, so I just remember when one of them yells out, "Technology!" and my kids just busted out laughing. They thought that was like, who yells something like that?
Zealots, religious zealots.
Yes, I know. So I don't know that one. I'll have to watch sometime so I can review it at some point too. But the Skeletor. So Skeletor is he's either a bumbling fool or he's like Langella, or he's a force to be reckoned with. Where he's sophisticated and he's definitely got. He's got his henchmen that are all failing him left and right, but at least in the Langella one, there were consequences for it. And the other series, it's like I'm just surrounded by fools and they keep failing me, and it's like, but he sends them back out
That's another one of those things I thought was weird. They in the first few minutes of the movie, they're pushing action figures of characters from the movie, and they put Blade and they put Sorod out and they make them out as their new big crazy bad guys, and then like in the first few minutes of the movie they kill Sorod, and it's like wow, okay, do I want to buy that toy? They killed him. But then there were several other characters in there that were kind of new characters or new versions that they never made toys of back then too, and I just didn't see the logic, I guess.
I do believe that Gary Goddard, the director, told me that it was it was because Sorod's costume was getting expensive. It's a lot of makeup, a lot of setup. It's uncomfortable. It's hard to move in. I think it was a budgetary reason why they killed him off. So other than that, I don't think it was necessarily any other reason.
That's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of stories if you ever get to listen to Gary Goddard. I keep saying Goddard. Listening to him and the stories of that film. But yeah, there was that reference. There was Pig Boy. Yeah, like you said, this will be our final battle. Loved hearing that. Loved seeing more Skeletor and He-Man fighting. But and this was something that also stuck out to me is the fight between Tila and Evelyn. I was having flashbacks of the Matrix, the third Matrix film. I think it's called Revelations or Revelation, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Revelation. MOTU Revelation. And whatever the third Matrix, where Neo is fighting with Agent Smith, and they're flying in the air, Superman style, going back and forth like this with their superpowers that they amped up with. And I saw that kind of same thing happening with Tila and Evelyn, when I would have rather them maybe do more of the hand-to-hand fighting rather than the sorcery kind of, and the flying, I guess, in the air was what it was. But at least they intercut it back and forth, and that was cool. Intercutting these multiple storylines that are kind of going on at the same time. Tila and the sorceress down, in the well, basically the pond, and then going back to Evelyn fighting with Adam and Skeletor, and things that were going on outside Castle Grayskull. And so there was a lot of these kind of like Star Wars, where you have multiple storylines happening simultaneously, and then they keep cutting back and forth, keeping you interested in multiple storylines happening at the same time. And it's like, and so I kind of liked seeing that in an animation. You don't get always that in an animation, especially if it's made for children. It's like focus on this one thing, not these multiple storylines like a Star Wars would do. So that was kind of cool to see. And so I guess, I can take it or leave it with that. The fight ended, and then, they made peace, and I guess she saw that her nihilistic idea of the emptiness of the universe was maybe unfounded somewhat, because then she saw things teeming with life, and I guess she's all about flowers and plants and things like that now. So that was an interesting, little twist on where I was going to say, where were they going with that? That idea that how are you going to get her to change her mind about the idea that you looked into the abyss and the abyss looked back at you. And so even Skeletor mentions that it's like, you shouldn't really, look at the universe at this perspective. But it's like, you invited me. So you said, come on in, check it out.
Well, and that's kind of, that in that ending, that's kind of a hold to me. I mean, normally I would be sitting there saying, well, you don't want to kill off all your bad guys, because, just because they're bad guys doesn't mean that they always end up dying. I mean, they, you think about it, there's been several times where somebody that, was a problem just kept being a problem, and it took years before somebody could do really anything about it. But I'm sitting there looking at it. This woman is just basically gone mad. So if she's gone mad, it's hard to come back from that. You've made them into a broken person. It's hard to piece those pieces back together and make them whole again. Other than, some sort of, magic ending where somebody casts a spell and fixes her. I didn't see how she came back from that like she did and walked away from it all.
Yeah, exactly. It's, that we've kind of talked a lot about our points there about, how this storyline has gone from one place to another. There's definitely other places it can go. We'll start wrapping up the show with our final thoughts on, how much we liked it, what could it have done that was different. Any kind of other final thoughts we might have. We'll start with you, Everett.
Oh, final thoughts. I mean, again, I had mixed feelings about the first part, but now as a whole, I'll have to sit down and just watch them all again, but I really enjoyed it. The second part redeemed itself for sure, to a certain extent, but I did enjoy it. It's not one of my favorite pieces of MOTU material, but I like it, and I consider, it has rewatchability for me. So it's not like, Kevin Smith kind of really just messed up. I'm never gonna touch this again. No, it's like I'll go back and I'll watch it every now and then. Sure.
Yeah.
And I'll show it to others and everything, but I'll suggest maybe this first, and then get to here.
Yeah.
This won't be something. Yeah, this won't be something that's like, even though it's newer animation and everything like that, it's not like, if you really kind of want to know more about it, start here and then get to hear it a little later.
Yeah, you can kind of take it or leave it. And this could be your series if you're not familiar with the backstory of a lot of MOTU, I get no sense. You could kind of just start here. Jonathan, your thoughts, final thoughts.
I think the thing that I enjoyed most about it, I was gonna say just watching, the whole He-Hulk sequence and all that destruction. I giggled gleefully watching that, but really thinking back about it, I think the thing that I enjoyed most about it was seeing all the various things in the background that would have been changed in like the Filmation version. Like they show Attack Track. And Attack Track looks like Attack Track from the toy line. It doesn't look like a toaster on Attack Track wheels. Stridor looks like Stridor. He doesn't look like just a silver metal horse. And there was a lot of that in the background. You get to see the Talon Fighter being flown around. You get to see just odds and ends vehicles and things that were in the toy line that they just completely and totally changed for Filmation. I really enjoyed, even though they were like little Easter eggs almost, I enjoyed watching a lot of that and seeing that and saying, hey, they finally got my toys in there where, they're my toys, and, as far as like it being like my favorite, I still, to this day, my favorite version of He-Man goes right back to the old Alcala comics, the old mini comics, the original ones that came out with the original wave of figures. That's my He-Man, because to me, seeing the commercials, it was, a lot more grim and dark and a little more like Conan the Barbarian and a lot less like Filmation when I was a kid. So,
yep.
But this is enjoyable. I do like it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And it was good to have something new and something fresh that I could enjoy. And if it brings new fans in, I enjoy that too. I like talking with people about it. So, it's a good series. I can't really put it down for, what it is.
I'd highly recommend that book you've got sitting on your desk, that mini comic series with all of the classics mini comics. It's a great just chance to, and the nice thing is you don't have to start from beginning to end. You can kind of jump in at different places. And it's my kids love looking at that and kind of picking and choosing what story they wanted to look at. There's one with a snake man. Here's one that's introduces Clawful or whatever. And
it kind of reminds me of some Disney picture books I had when I was little that, there were all these different stories in there. There were different chapters, different stories, different characters. So you get to flip around like you're saying, pick something out and go with it. Just be flipping through the book and go, well, this is interesting. I've never read this before. Let's see what this is about. So, but it's a great book.
Yeah. There's a lot of great literature.
All the Dark Horse books that they've done so far have been great. There's a couple I don't have, but I've been trying to grab them when I can, and I haven't seen one of these yet that I was unhappy with. They've been good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give my final thoughts here, and we'll kind of wrap this up. But as far as Revelation goes, I'm excited to see what they're going to do next with it. I think it's one of those series that you can take or leave. I'm picking it up on it. I'm watching it. I've already watched this part 2 twice just to kind of see what I missed. And I was glad I did, because there was some things, like you said, in the background there that you might have missed the first go around. One of the cool things that I do like about it is little bits of comedy that the Filmation series did as well. There was some, when you go back to the Filmation series, the comedy's a bit on the dated side though. So with this new audience and all that, thinking about He-Man on the screen of the Talon fighter there and saying, "Mom, can you drop me off?" Things like that. Just I laughed out loud at that one. Places like that. But there's other places where this one had some of the bad puns that I don't know if that was intentional or not to be bad. Maybe it was, again, a little homage to Film
I'd like to fist him.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that one, yeah. The second I heard that, I was like, really? That's what you're gonna pick?
Well,
that's terrible. That's terrible.
And it was horrible in the mini comics too. To this day, they use it in horrible memes on the internet. So
I know. And then there was what was it? A goat man saying we don't use puns, and he couldn't think of something to say, and I was like, oh, good. Well, at least it's self-aware of what it's doing. So there was a lot of moments that it's self-aware. It's aware that it has an audience and that certain members of the audience are going to catch this. It's almost, again, the character is kind of looking at the camera and saying, yeah, you got that? Okay. And there are other fans that are out there saying, what? And then you got to be... Yeah. You get to be comic book guy and explain, way back in, this series, they mentioned this, but they didn't do it the right way. So it's got fan service for everyone. So I do appreciate what they're doing. I do wonder, what Netflix is going to do with this and Mattel, actually, I should say, because, I'm hearing about Universal taking back the rights. So, is Mattel going to continue making, toys / animations, going forward with it being in Universal's possession? Is Universal kind of want to keep things status quo? Are they going to want to take it in their different direction with a new team? We'll kind of see how this goes. But excited to see where they go with it, and it's well worth a watch. I will say this: it's not one that's I'd say always child friendly. It's one of the things that the Filmation series. When they would hit each other, they never really struck each other. They'd always, strike. Swords would clang, but for the most part, they could toss each other or come up with cartoony, interesting ways of fighting off their enemies. But this one, they were just brutal. I mean, there was lots of strikes and blood and everything. So,
hey, Prince Adam, hold my sword for a minute.
Yeah, it was like. Yeah, this is definitely for the adult cartoon watcher, and so, but there's little things in there. That's why I guess they came out with the CGI series too, so they would have that too to watch and say, this is their He-Man, this is our He-Man. Everyone gets something out of, and it's cool as MOTU fans to say it's back on the air. New content is being made. There's been a long time where nothing was being made. So This is what's cool about being a fan these days. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah,
I agree.
All right. Well, with that thought out of the way, it's been a great show having you guys on here. We're definitely going to be doing this again, being our first live episode. Didn't have a whole lot of interaction. We got Mr. Hootie Dean on there, and he's in the chat. And thank you so much for chatting in, and definitely watch as we continue on with this. And on the Monster Report, we've got episodes in the making and lots of trailers still coming out. So like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, all those great things here on YouTube. Check out Godzilla Fan Freaks on YouTube. Be on the lookout for Jonathan, what he does in the future on YouTube, and also catch him on Instagram and Facebook. Look him up, and we are definitely going to be seeing what we have in the future to talk about on this show as we go along. So for me, Nick Adam Poling, this has been another episode of the Monster Report. Until next time.